Welcome to the TheXTPodcast, your ultimate destination for valuable insights, practical advice, and inspiring stories that will transform the way you experience business, governance, and life. Join your host, Ashutosh, as he dives deep into three distinct editions: Customer Experience Edition, where industry leaders discuss CX strategies, product brand, employee experience, digital innovations, and best practices for improving customer engagement, retention, and loyalty.
Ever wondered how to supercharge your sales game while staying calm and focused? Curious about techniques that not only reduce stress but also skyrocket your sales performance? Do you want to know how mindfulness could help you trial close and make your pipeline forecasting way more accurate? In this special extended episode, we sit down with Eric Szymanski, Director of Sales at Amadeus and co-founder of the American Mindfulness Association, to discuss these and many more pertinent questions. Eric is a sales powerhouse with a proven track record, including leading teams that have successfully achieved and surpassed their sales targets, millions and more in revenue. He's also the author of Sell More, Stress Less, a guide packed with tips to thrive in sales without burning out. This episode is a goldmine for sales professionals eager to learn how mindfulness can transform their approach, making them not just more effective but also more resilient. We recorded this in two distinct sessions to cover the depth and breadth of mindful sales practices comprehensively. You will notice different settings, but this deep dive was absolutely necessary to bring you the most impactful and deepest of insights. Join us as Eric shares his journey and actionable strategies to help you reduce anxiety, increase efficiency, and achieve greater success in sales. Whether you are a seasoned pro or just starting, this episode will provide you with tools to excel and stand out in the competitive sales landscape. Let's dive in and transform your sales journey. Thank you so much for joining us, Eric, gracing us with your presence. And who better than you to tell us how to sell better, and that too without stress? So thank you for joining and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ash. And you mentioned without stress, and I wish we could go there. There is one clarifier I will put on our conversation is when we speak about stress in sales, our guidance is less stress. Our book is not titled No Stress because we want to be realistic. It is an important guidance to have when we're setting up the conversation that if your expectation is zero stress, it is possible yet highly unlikely. So where we're framing the conversation is how we can maybe turn the stress meter down, turn the volume of the stress down, or at least increase your ability to manage and work through it without the negative side effects and consequences that prolonged exposure to stress with no plan creates.
Spoken like a genuine sales leader, Eric, which is why I was so keen to have you on this show, because had it been any other salesperson, it would have been fairly normal to overpromise. But there you are immediately correcting me and ensuring that I don't overpromise. I'm realistic in the commitment I make. And that shows the professionalism you have carried through your career, Eric. So thank you for correcting me. I stand corrected for sure. And in fact, that brings me to my first question, Eric, which is, I genuinely am fascinated with the career trajectory you have had. I was just mentioning it in the introduction as well, that very rarely you come across a sales leader who has had a services leadership experience. And I feel, for me, because I come from a similar background as well, that these are two worlds that usually have a conflicting relationship, but at the same time a collaborative relationship. So firstly, why sales, and how did this transition from service to sales helped you?
Well, thank you for asking, Ash. And if I were to go back in time to before my sales career began, I think I would have told you absolutely not. I had a lot of assumptions about sales that many individuals have, that this is not a respectable position, something that carries negative consequences, because most salespeople, at least my consciousness and awareness back then, was we're out to get you or trick you into doing something that you really didn't want to do, or would overpromise and underdeliver, or try to convince you that this was the product that could do certain things, but it really, in reality, wouldn't do those things. For me, I grew up in a house and a home with two parents. My mother worked later in my childhood, once I was in middle school and high school, but my father led a pure commission-only sales career.
Wow.
And through the power of being a child of a parent who has a job that it relies on commissions. And what does that mean to me? It means, well, is there food on the table to eat? If there's no sales, how is there going to be food? If there's no sales, what does the holiday look like? Do we go out of town on vacation? What do we wear? Like, what is our exactly existence? Not that you want to compare to people, but I think as children, especially growing up, you believe that what you're experiencing in your home may be the only way that life is. And then you go outside of your home and see a friend or someone else, and you talk to them, and they are doing it so differently. And they don't have the problems of either no food. It was always a big one, like opening the refrigerator and there's either food to eat or food in the pantry, or very little limited options, or nothing at all, right? So in the core needs of our life and things, food, shelter, safety, security, my introduction to sales was a good 17 years of observing my own father's successes and failures in the profession of commission-only sales.
Wow.
So when I set out to venture into college and then a career, sales was the farthest thing from my mind. What
Sure.
happened in the college years was I studied psychology, industrial organizational psychology at the University of Central Florida in Orlando in the United States. And what I did there was freshman year, I took a class about careers in psychology. I thought I would become a psychologist in my career path, but one of the early classes we took in college was speaking to business leaders about what they valued from a college graduate. And if you just came out with a business degree versus a psychology degree, how did that impact if you had a choice between two candidates? And not just one,
Wow.
but many business leaders from many organizations in this coursework said something to the effect of, if I had the choice between two candidates and one had a psychology degree and one had a business degree, I would choose the psychology major, because business is people, and in how you interact with people makes a difference. And what happened in that moment after I took that class the freshman year was I added a business minor to my psychology degree. Part of that, there's no sales training. This is the early 90s, early to mid 90s. And what's fascinating to me, if you fast forward to about 8 years ago, 10 years ago in my career, when I was working for the Walt Disney Company in Orlando, we partnered with universities frequently in students and professors to collaborate. And many of the universities had no proper sales portion
Sure.
of their business training.
Correct.
And we helped them, guide them to those who would add that type of content. So for me, it wasn't even on the radar. I knew I didn't want to do it back then. So when I graduated with my psychology degree and my business minor, and I went into the workforce, I started in the services arena because I think that's the opportunity that was presented to me. And I was recommended and referred by a friend to an organization where I brought a great level of skills in catering and food and beverage. I was working in the food service industry throughout college to help pay my way through. So that natural progression into a leadership role required a lot of wonderful support from a leader to teach me even what servicing an agreement would look like to a convention at a hotel.
Sure.
That convention could look very different, and there were often multiple things happening simultaneously, both in the building and also recently checked out of the building, and then the largest portion, which is those who have signed their agreement but haven't arrived yet, but want some sort of service. So
Sure.
I was able to learn how to service the contracts for conventions by inheriting what was already sold. So this was post sale. And then having to live with those consequences of delivering and at a very high level executing them. And just because you want to be servicing them at a high level and you can, does not mean that always happens. And
Correct.
sometimes the reason it does not happen is because of something the salesperson did that created that experience, right? So through
Absolutely.
the lifetime experience of growing up in a home with a sales uh, parent in a sales profession that had success and failure, that had to live with those consequences, and then starting my career in out of college, a role as a leader in a hotel in which I was required to be the face of the organization, good, bad, or many times ugly. And because someone had to hit their sales quota, and sometimes some decisions are made to close the deal that are known and or unknown, which lead to positive expected, positive unexpected, but sometimes negative expected, which is my pet peeve. It's like, you knew this was going to happen, and you don't have to live with this, but I do. So it took me 5 years of performing that sales operations services executing role before I was able to even say, all right, I'm ready to move over to the sales side. I believe I can now do this. I've walked in their shoes many, many times. And now I would like to try it because I believe I bring a core set of competencies that will help me prevent those challenges, or if I create them, I will at least do it in a way that is ethical, where the customer is aware of it before they agree. Because if they agree to it and they know the challenge, then we have some joint accountability there, right? So, very mindful practice that I didn't even know was happening way back out of college.
Now I get it, Eric. Because of your answer, I can now relate to how you arrive at mindful sales. Because although right at the start I mentioned you will help us know how to sell better with less stress, and now I'm being specific about less
Thank you for
stress.
that.
Um, what I realize, Eric, is the way you talk about mindful cells is far more holistic. It's not just about the individual experience in terms of living with lesser stress while achieving or surpassing the targets and outcomes, but it's also about improving customer experience in terms of setting the right promises, delivering the right promises, ensuring that you're committing to the things which we can deliver, and also possibly coworker experience, because while you're selling, you're dealing with your coworkers, your peers, your colleagues, and you're ensuring that their experience is right as well. So I see when I talk to you that this is a huge holistic space. What mindful sales means to you, and how did you arrive at mindful sales?
I think, great question, Ash. I think if we were to do it, if I could go back again and start all over again, I would have loved to have somebody explain mindfulness to me so that I could at least have had that with me through my first 25 years in my career, because that journey without it, not fully having an awareness that there's an option called mindfulness. And for those sales professionals who are on the call, who are watching this right now, you may be thinking, if you're new to sales, or if you've been doing it for a little while, or even if you've been doing it for a very long time. In my experience, I did not have exposure to this until well into my career, after not only I had success in sales as an individual contributor, performing a specific role to a specific audience. But then when I led sales teams and became a leader of other sales professionals, where I was required and accountable for their performance and my own, setting the marketing and sales collaboration and strategies, also how the services and executable operational team across the entire organization would manage the agreement, understanding the legal ramifications of the agreements I was entering into, any variations of what we would be agreeing to before the contract was signed. I was exposed to this after I achieved the highest sales award in North America for the Walt Disney Company. And
Wow.
it was 2018. I was the end of the fiscal year, which for Disney at that time was the first week of October. The fiscal year goes October 1 through September 30th, which is typically where the government's annual fiscal year is. It was aligned with that. So here I am sitting in a coffee shop having lunch with a friend. The year had finished. I knew I was in contention to be one of the top sales award winners that year. I didn't have the results compared to the team, but what I was going to find out later in the weeks to come was not only was I an award winner, I was the top award winner in North America, percentage over sales goal for the fiscal year. And because of that, I was going to be receiving commission, financial compensation, travel, awards, recognition, all the wonderful things that many sales professionals are craving, right? That positive reinforcement. However, I was sitting in that coffee shop and I was internally exhausted. I was having, and what I now know is anticipatory grief for my goal for the next year, because when you win these wonderful awards, guess what? Next year, your goal never goes down, right? Many times it goes up. And
Correct.
typically it doesn't go up a little, it may go up a lot, but there was just a lot of unknowns. And I didn't really fully understand and appreciate. I knew it took me 4 years, literally 4 years of engaging with my target audience to get to the top award. Some of those sales cycles were much longer than we anticipated, even though it seemed like a year would be an appropriate amount of time for a sales to go from whether it's prospect to active in the pipeline to interested and validation and all of those wonderful things in our sales process through site visits or trial closing and demonstrating and closing and the business and all the wonderful things that you have to go through to get there. That just because we give you a year as a fiscal measurement doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen. Luckily, I was having lunch with a friend who was an expert in mindfulness. And when we were comparing notes, how are you doing? Hadn't spoke with this friend in a year and a half or two. How are you doing? We were just comparing notes. We found that on one side of the table was this understanding and awareness that being fully present in the moment, non-judgmentally, was wrapped around every part of their business. And when you put those words together, many times that's the accepted definition of mindfulness, is you're being fully present on purpose. You know that you're paying attention and you are not judging. You're fully aware and in control of your thoughts and your processes that are happening. However, that side of the table was not having sales success in that moment at that time. And on my side of the table, I was having all of the sales success in the world. And I thought I was in control, but I just didn't have a process. I didn't have an active, mindful sales practice. I was doing a lot of the things right that would require a sales profession. I was logging in the morning. I was getting and engaging proactive sales conversations. So I wasn't waiting for the phone to ring. I was aligning myself with customers that I wanted to do business with, meeting them, whether it was virtually or in person at trade shows and events, or traveling to their cities and destinations, or if they were traveling to mine, I was working to schedule appointments and sales calls to set up those appointments that would lead to the conversations that would eventually lead to sales and conversion of contracts. But without the mindfulness practice, I was burning out. I had burned both ends of the candle for multiple years with no plan. At that time, still am a parent, but my children were in high school, high stress time for them. There was the junior year of high school. So you're talking, in America, SAT preparation, standardized testing, starting to really take seriously where you're thinking about if you are going to college, what that looks like. And, just very very pressure cooker type of environment that was self-induced in many cases. However, no plan for stress. So what I found was, okay, I don't know what this is. When we compared notes and I heard about this mindfulness thing, I don't know what this is, but I know I want to learn everything there is to know about it. And after a 6-week coaching contract, we had a reciprocal coaching contract. I was coaching that friend for 6 weeks in sales process, sales theory, putting all of the right steps into place so that there were opportunities for the right conversations and the right healthy funnel, healthy pipeline, healthy conversations, negotiating, pricing, reevaluated the entire business model in that 6 weeks. It was a great coaching timeline. I also received 6 weeks of coaching, professional coaching on mindfulness. And what I
Nice.
learned in that 6 weeks was the foundation of what would become a book that I was able to write less than 2 years later, publish, and start winning awards for not only sales in that book, but for the content and the looking at how sales could look completely different. The reason we put that book together and compared our notes was we started seeing that no one was really talking about mindfulness in sales. And if we Google searched that at that time, there was literally one article in one obscure college study about it, and that was all that you could find. Gratefully now there's a lot different conversation about mindfulness in sales, how it can apply to you, your organization, how, as you mentioned earlier, it will impact your financial results, your customer experience, and your employee experience, and how that can lead to the successes that businesses like to speak to. In the language of business, we usually are responding with a business justification or some sort of metric that we can measure, and you can measure it. That's the best part.
You can measure it. I think that is what attracted me to this topic, Eric. What I loved about the way you articulate your thoughts around mindful sales is that it's always tied to specific outcomes that could be measured. Um, and in fact, that's what probably I loved about the 7 practices that you have articulated about mindful sales as well. To all the listeners and the viewers, I'll be sharing the links to the several articles that Eric has written on this specific aspect. What Eric has done is systematically breaking down the sales journey into different stages and phases, and for each stage and phase he's come up with approaches to be mindfully aware of the stage and have an intervention which completely enhances the way that process is managed, that stage is managed, and then achieve a mindful sales. So what I would love to deep dive with you through this episode now, Eric, is focus on those 7 practices. I would love to kind of focus on the first part, which you briefly mentioned in your response earlier, which was about energy. Sales is a high intensity, high energy job, and the moment you achieve a target, your target's going to increase. So you need more energy to achieve that, bigger and larger target, and that's a never-ending cycle. Amidst this, what I loved is when you articulate saying it's necessary to be positive and carry that energy right from the start of the day through the entire day and continue doing it day after day. What is it that you would recommend for us to be able to do this? And two, why do you think this energy matters, this positivity, this optimism matters?
I'll give you a brief story on how your beliefs can transform your sales success and or failures. Because I will tell you, as soon as you asked this question, I was immediately reminded of a sales encounter I had in a software company in which I was partnering and collaborating in a team sales environment, which required a sales professional on the front lines to go out and engage an audience of target customers. And that salesperson and I had a sales strategy session for 30 minutes. And I will tell you that professional was extraordinarily pessimistic about their outcomes and what they believed would be successful. And what was awesome, was so cool about this was After we went through that pre-strategy call and we had the right list of to-dos, right? So, there's always sales has a do. It's typically an action. I say sales is a verb. It's an action-oriented word. It's not like a thing that just sits there. It
Nice.
has action to it. So once we established our actions, this professional engaged, let's just say it was a list of, for argument's sake, let's say it was 20 customers. It was around that. And when that was, let's say, in the fourth quarter, and the sales metrics were monthly, but really everyone was looking at the end of the quarter. And lo and behold, we put this into our pipeline as sort of an aspirational customer target. And wouldn't it be great if all 20 of them were to say yes, and all 20 of them were to sign their contracts? And before you know it, she just went off and running and engaged with that audience. We had bi-weekly check-ins. How's it going? Made contact with this. We put this together. This is going well. This isn't. And fast forward, it was really only about 6 to 8 weeks from that initial strategy session to the end of the quarter, which just so happened to be the end of the year. And lo and behold, the results come in January. And this person has not only sold more than what we thought we would to those 20 customers, but it was significantly more. And it was actually like a point where it was one of the first results I saw in our quarter end summary, when I was looking through all of those results, and I called that individual and I said, first and foremost, congratulations. I just got the preliminary results. We weren't sure if these things were going to be signed by the end of the year or if they were going to carry into the first quarter. But not only did you sign way more than we thought we did, I just wanted to say congratulations, but I'm curious, like, what happened? How did you do it? Because we checked in, but I didn't see this. I couldn't forecast this with certainty before the end of the year. And here we are. Now it's the end of the year and we've already signed it. And the response this professional gave was, I got to tell you, Eric, I didn't believe any of those people were going to sign their contracts. And when we finished our strategy session, I genuinely thought that none of them would, and it would be a huge waste of my time. But I said to myself, you know what? Even though I believe that none of that's going to happen, I'm going to do it anyways, and I'm going to try, and let's just see what happens. And you know what happened? Those results came in and they were super stellar. And when we talk about the first step of mindful sales, I've been through a very high number, more than a couple dozen professional sales courses. When you break them down, many of them will tell you there's 7 steps, and those steps typically revolve around a common theme. And you start with something around meeting and greeting, qualifying the business, putting some sort of presentation together, demonstrating your product, putting trial closes together, closing the business, following up on the business, and then repeating it over and over and over again. And there's different nuances to all of that, but it's all about the doing. When my co-author and I sat down and spoke about how we could frame sales differently with the goal of preventing burnout while still achieving high levels of success, we start with beliefs. And our first step in mindful sales really says, before you even engage with your customer, what do you believe? Do you believe in your product? Do you believe, if it's a service, if it's a widget or a gadget, or if it's literally a good or a service, this works, and it's universal to any product, any service, anything where you're having an exchange of goods and commerce, where there's whether it's financial exchange or bartering or some sort of service for service. What do you believe? Do you believe that your customer can afford your product? Do you believe that you're good enough to stand behind that product? Do you believe your product is garbage and yet you're trying to sell it at a premium? That belief can set the tone and set that energy in motion. We don't always talk about it from an energy standpoint. I like how you framed it up, but because it is actual, the energy is sometimes intangible, but there's a tangible nature to that energy. But if you start with your beliefs, let's examine that. We'll break it down for you. We'll share how you believe in sales? Do you believe that sales is a positive experience with a positive outcome? Or do you believe that it's just the job you do and it sucks and it leads to all of these negative outcomes, but your customer doesn't want to talk to you because you're a salesperson, but they have to? So do you genuinely believe that? Or do you believe that you can provide an exceptional experience to your customer that will lead them to be so happy that they want to come back, and anytime they're going to purchase, they want to buy from you? Because we love buying. Every one of us as a consumer loves buying, but we don't love being sold to, or the feeling that you're trying to get me to do something I don't want to do. So when I start out on a journey of sales, and when I think about how to do sales, let's take a step back. And in mindful sales, we actually take 2 steps back. We start with your beliefs before we do anything. So.
Wow. And frankly, I cannot agree more, Eric, because I genuinely believe that belief is contagious. When as a customer, when I think of myself as well, I think I believe the belief of the one who's selling things to me first. And then I rationalize whether it's worth buying or not. That's an afterthought. The logic comes later. I think the belief in the person comes first, because the first thing where my mind goes is, can I even trust this person? And it does he or she believes in what she or he is selling. So all of this is the start. I have a curiosity though, Eric. Is there a method to bring that belief into the product or the proposition? Um, is there some way where we can visualize um, effectively a positive sales outcome through a specific engagement, and get the belief on board for us to be able to sell with belief?
So that's a multi-part question, Ash, and I'm going to break it down into how I heard it. So the first part is, how do you get someone to believe, or how is that belief defined? And how do you get that positive piece of belief tied together? And then the second part is, how do you visualize it, right? So you're
Correct.
tiptoeing, and you're building a dotted line to our second step in mindful sales, which involves visualization. So let's take those one step at a time, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
So belief. Okay. I've sold products that I don't necessarily have all of the belief in the world in at a specific price threshold. So, for example, there's dynamic price points in the hotel industry, and we can sell rooms that are the same physical structure, but they might be at a different price point based on the time you book. Is it far in advance? Based on any guarantees that you might provide? Is there a volume purchase? Is there an affiliation with some organization that drives large numbers of business to you over the course of a year? But if the product isn't warranting a price premium, I've sold them at times when I believed in the product at a certain price point. But once you get over it, my belief starts to go down a little bit, and then I try to do my best, but also I want the customer to experience the entire product and have an educated buying decision before they make that purchase. Economics has supply and demand, and if demand is up and supply is low, the price goes up. I mean, I'm not going to give an economics lesson, but it is important for you to understand that there's a variable. I've spoken with sales professionals who've called me for advice and for coaching sessions, or sometimes to go into their entire team and deliver a full-on training session about this, where my favorite conversation in this context was, okay, look, we got our goals for next year. I got the pricing for next year, and we're not worth that product. Our product is good, but it's good at this price point. And let's say it's $200 per unit. It could be 50 cents. This does not mean, we're only selling 200. It could be 20,000. It could be 2 million per product. But in this context, let's just say it's a hotel room and it was $200 per night for one room. Standard occupancy, single, double, one guest or two, one bed or two. So the goals came out, and let's just say they were 300 plus, 400 plus, 500 plus. It was that you could see the economic tides turning. And the question came to me of, I need you to help me have this conversation with my leaders that they're insane and there's no way we're worth that and no one will ever buy that. Listen to the belief statements in these sentences. What do you want me to do when I don't believe that we're worth that price point? And I took a breath and thanked the person who brought that to me, sales professional, highly successful. And we sat down and I said, first and foremost, I have gratitude that you trust me to have this conversation because you mentioned trust earlier, Ash. And in any relationship, especially a new relationship, there is a high level of skepticism and trust anxiety. Can
Correct.
I trust this person? And trust is developed over time, right? Your experience of how you trust people can sometimes come very quickly, or it might take a lifetime to develop trust. But in customer situations, we have the challenge of developing trust in a short amount of time and building upon that so that we have the ability to do business together. Well, this individual in the belief conversation, my advice was this. When you approach your customers and you offer that price point and your job by definition is to deliver the financial results and achieve and or exceed the goals that have been put in front of you. So although you weren't a part of that conversation in setting the price of your product and that a huge shift in the economy has come in, my advice is that you do the best job that you can to fully demonstrate to your customers what they're getting for that price point and let the customer decide if that's something that they want. And if you were to go through all of your sales encounters throughout the year and by the first quarter, you've achieved no sales at that price point, then you go back to your leaders and you say, listen, I want you to be aware from a purely non-judgmental standpoint, I'm communicating with you that based on the targets that I've been given, the price point you've asked me to sell, I've gone out and I've given it my best, and my results have not come in where we expected them to. That doesn't mean I'm giving up. That means I'm going to continue to try, and I would like to bring you in and help understand how we can achieve our goals. And at the end of the day, if your belief carries with you every single day that we're just not worth it, that I don't believe in it, subconsciously, you're going to bring that into your sales experience. And maybe you don't go through the processes of fully qualifying the business. Maybe you're not trying to build the relationship with the customer. Maybe you just try to shorten the cycle, get to the closed lost so that you can say, look, I told you so. Well, if that's your goal and your intention when you start your sales experience, you might be successful, but from our experience and in the studies that we share, chances are you're not going to be successful. So how do we shift that belief? How do we get you to believe in that price point? How do we get you to believe in your product again? That is a long conversation, and it does require leadership, some collaborative, maybe bringing your salespeople and their feedback into the conversation during goal setting. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that does not happen. But I'll tell you what, when I walk into a customer scenario, if I don't believe that customer can afford the price point, I will go through the process anyways. And I will, as a professional, not judge that person. And if they can afford it, I'm going to assume the sale. I'm going to assume in my belief that they can. And if they are unable to demonstrate through deposits, or if I understand that they've never really had that, they don't have any money to put down, or they don't have any financial guarantees, they've never really even bought anything like this before, generally good qualification, good old-fashioned sales discovery, then we'll action that accordingly, and we'll advise them to go find those resources before we can do business, because it's a two-way street. We both have to agree that this
Correct.
works for both of us in a sales scenario. So the belief part is critical, that you believe in yourself, you believe in your process, you believe in the core deliverables, that what you sell will be delivered to on a high level. If you're part of an organization that cannot do those things, chances are there may or may not be a long relationship with you and that organization and the organization and customers in the future. Not saying it doesn't happen, it does, but it's rare. Now, the visualization part.
Yes.
How do you visualize a successful sales encounter? We had a customer come to us, a potential client, and they said, after 2 days of meetings, we were wrapping up and we said, thank you for this time. It's been very valuable. Where are you going next? Like, do you have anything you're planning with the rest of your day? And this professional came to me and said, I have a call scheduled with a client and I'm dreading it. I'm absolutely hating it. This customer I've talked to a bunch of times, they're always negative. They're accusatory. We always get into an argument and it never ends well. So I have that to look forward to this afternoon. And I said, well, thank you for sharing that, but can I offer you a suggestion? And they looked at me a little curious because I think before I knew about mindfulness in sales, I would have said, oh yeah, that's going to be awful, right? Like I've been in those calls and that's just going to be terrible. And I feel bad. I'm sorry for you. Like I'm empathetic. I've been in those positions before, right? So you have empathy and some of those things are taught in sales. But after learning about mindfulness, I shared this, Ash. I said, does it have to be that way? And my mindfulness coach started there because after I won that sales award, I said many of the things that person said. You know what? I won this award, but I can't even really enjoy it because I'm already thinking about how horrible it's going to be the next year trying to get to that number. And I'm probably not going to achieve it because it's higher and it took me 4 years to get to that goal. If you're a salesperson, maybe you've been in that position as well. Not every salesperson has won the top award, but maybe you just feel like that regardless. The visualization of success that I advised that person going on the call was, one, does it have to be that way? And they looked at me with curiosity and confusion. And I said, what if this call was wonderful? What if that call what if that was the best? It was a contract dispute where they hadn't signed the contract yet, but they were arguing over some of the clauses and terms that they hadn't signed yet. And I said, this is really great. You're having these conversations before you sign the contract. You know what negotiating before you, or you know what a conversation before you sign the contract is called? That's negotiation. Do you know what a conversation where you ask for something after the contract is signed? That's called begging, right? Like if you're asking to change the terms of the contract, but you already have a signed contract, there's two very different things. You're having it before the contract was signed. So what we said was, what I shared with this professional was, when you go to this call, tell yourself that you're going to make this the best contract dispute conversation you've ever had. You're going to make the customer feel good about themselves. You're not going to get argumentative. You're going to be very calm throughout the entire discussion. And it's going to go really, really well. And they walked away from me looking a little crazy. But 2 days later, I got a phone call. And it was from that particular customer. And they said, you're never going to believe this. I just had to call you and say, and thank you, because we had an amazing conversation. Everything I thought about that call and how it was going to be negative did not happen. Not only did it not happen, it was amazing. It led to further sales within the contract that I didn't even know were going to happen. And we already signed the contract. It was super easy and everything was great. There's your belief and there's your visualization. Let's picture that call going very, very well. The way a professional athlete visualizes their success, whether it's a ball going into a hole or a net or we're coming into the Olympics. I guarantee you most, if not all of those Olympians have a mental preparation that they're visualizing the success before they ever go on to their sport and execute it. Their training, their coaches have shown them that you have to see the success. Now, there are pitfalls to that. If you start daydreaming in the middle of your execution, like what happened in a past Olympics, the winner, the top runner, right? Was it Flojo or one of those runners were in the hurdles and they were 2/3 of the way leading the race. And before the race was done, they saw the gold medal around their neck and they basically forgot to finish the race and ended up not even medaling. And if they medaled, it wasn't the gold that they were heavily favored for. So I challenge sales professionals, one, to re-examine your belief when we talk about mindful sales, not just your belief, but your beliefs in general. And then also how you can visualize that success and if you were to paint a picture or look back upon your sales experience before it ever happened. Yes, you want to be wearing the gold medal or in the business context, seeing those contracts signed with your customer being so happy. and that their boss is now proud of them, your boss is proud of you. How do we get to that level? May not actually happen, but you can always visualize it, and let's work towards that.
I cannot agree more with you, Eric. You're so right when you say, irrespective of whether things happen or not, there's no harm in re-examining one's beliefs and visualizing the success. Now, once we visualize the success, Eric, what I also see is another challenge emerging, which is all about the North Star that all of us in sales have, which is the closure. This is where I feel a lot of anxiety and stress builds up. So, is there any mindful strategy that you can advise, Eric, about closing in or having a trial close and effectively doing it so as to have the least anxiety and stress through this process?
Yeah, Ash, and thank you for asking this wonderful question. When we're talking about sales professionals and anxiety about closing the sale or asking for the business, I don't even think it's the closing, the actual physical art of signing an agreement. Many times that leads to relief and celebration, and then the next level of anxiety potential, which is, how are we going to deliver on this or not? It just depends on the individuals. But one thing I can share about trial closing in general, or the best part about someone who's really nervous about asking for the business, the big ask, like, do you want to do business with me or not? And I think it runs a spectrum with salespeople that some want to ask for the business early, often, and they're premature and they're doing it and they don't really fully understand the potential consequences of asking for it. When you're thinking of someone who has anxiety around this, perhaps they're newer to sales and they've received the training and it's overwhelming, and they're already in a position where they've maybe been told no, or they're afraid to be told no. What gives you great confidence when we use mindfulness in sales is, one, you have an awareness that there is a process. You've brought together that checklist of items that you want to accomplish prior to engaging in any sort of closure. And I'd like to introduce the concept of bringing anxiety down through using a technique that you don't have to wait until the very end of your checklist and ask for the business. Although from a timing perspective, that is typically where you would wait until all of those things are done to ask for the business. But the best part about a trial close, and let's define that so everyone knows who's on the call, what is a trial close? So before you even ask, would you like to do business with me? And there's dozens, if not hundreds of ways to ask for the business. There's verbal and nonverbal ways to do it. There's just sending a contract and asking for it to be reviewed and signed. And if you're in person, the old way used to be sliding the contract and handing the pen to the person and seeing if they pick up the pen and sign it. There's a lot of nonverbals there. But a trial close really is a lot of miniature. You break that huge ask into a lot of smaller pieces. So as you're working through with your customer and you're doing a lot of the selling per se, which is a verb, as we accomplished sales earlier, we defined that you have to do something in sales. So if you're sitting there waiting for sales to happen, it's probably not going to happen, or if the odds of success go down. Well, if you even start at the beginning during your meet and greet in your sales process of asking, is it okay if we just take a minute and spend time talking? Okay, great. If you get a yes there, fine. If you get a no, I need to know right now, what's your best price? Okay, I can give you my rate card pricing, my rack rate, my highest price right now. What I'd like to do is propose that if it's okay with you, let's spend a little more time. Let's schedule it if this doesn't work for you now. Let's schedule time where we can exchange some information. And if you'd like, I can send that to you electronically, or we can talk about it during that call later. But when you're asking permission, would it be okay if we exchange that information? Well, what is the return what's in it for the customer, right? Like why would they want you to spend any time with them as a sales professional? I believe as a mindful sales professional that my time spent in the qualification or discovery phase and the relationship development with a customer will ultimately lead to a better value. And where that value comes in is if you share some information with me, there's a very good chance I can offer you better pricing, or perhaps I can bundle some things to package it together. Now that I've learned what you're really asking for, maybe you don't need the whole package. Maybe I can cut it into smaller pieces and offer you a smaller piece in exchange for a smaller price. But the trial close you insert along the way, and you're asking as you present your solutions, is this the type of experience or product or solution that you're looking for? Would this meet the needs? Earlier in this conversation, here's an example of a trial close. You shared with me that um, one of your goals in purchasing this product or service is to make sure that this reflects positively on you so that your leaders you can demonstrate to your leaders that you are capable and confident and that they can put trust in you. Is this the type of, when we just reviewed this one little piece, is that going to help you accomplish this goal? Yes. Or no, or maybe, right? So you have to wait and anticipate that the response isn't necessarily going to be an automatic yes, and you're so amazing.
Of course.
And this is where that anxiety piece comes in. So sales professionals may have this, I don't want you to not like me, or, I really want you to buy from me, or if you're an amiable personality type where that's your most important need as a salesperson, that you want your customers to like you. Well, yes, that's important, and many sales professionals have that accomplished. However, it's not always a realistic goal. As we're trial closing, you may be, if you're an amiable personality type, working with a super analytical driving leader who just doesn't care about the fluffiness and the feels and the feelings. They just want to get and accomplish things, get them done.
Right.
If you're working with an engineering type mind. So as we trial close, the more trial closes you can put into your sales cycle, I see it as an inverse relationship. As you add trial close, your anxiety comes down typically because you feel more confident in asking for the sale. And the bare minimum for me, if you are a true mindful sales professional, if you get at least, and this is like doing the minimum, 3 trial closes before you ask for the close. Once you've accomplished, whether it's an objection or you get a positive affirmation on that from your customer, once you get to the minimum of 3, I think the sweet spot is closer to 8 or 10, especially in larger deals. It's a smaller deal. If we're talking about a goods value exchange of $5 or 20 pounds or less, or something extraordinarily less than a major purchase, okay, maybe 1 is good. But once you get into larger, I'm talking 5, 6, 7 plus figure deals, you're going to want to add more trial closes in, because think about it. If someone were coming to you to ask for $4 million or 40 million or 400, are you just going to say, hello, we just met, you look trustworthy, here's 4 million pounds, or whatever the rupee equivalent of that is, or any sort of euros, or all of the currencies around the world? Of course not. And how would you expect your customer to go through that? And last but not least, I went whitewater rafting in Tennessee about 15 years ago, and I brought 2 of my daughters with me on that trip, one of which suffered from anxiety and the idea of getting in a tube with a helmet and a life jacket and an oar and a group of people and going down whitewater rafting was extremely anxious. I love the mindfulness of this company that we ended up selecting to take us on this journey, because when we were checking into the experience, we were given a questionnaire, and one of the questions was, is anyone in your party anxious or afraid of experiencing this? When we checked yes, without question, one out of our party is very anxious about this. Their organization, one, recognized that they had a process in place to work with this. And what they
Wow.
did was they assigned a guide in the boat to our party who had training in overcoming anxiety. And what was so great was this individual was a college age male. I would consider this to be a young person to have this ability to overcome anxiety with a stranger right before,
Absolutely.
during, and after the experience. And they said something that I take into mindful sales, which is, a lot of times when you have that anxiety about experiencing anything, it's because you just don't know what's going to happen, right?
Right.
So I'm here to tell you that there was a lot of peace of mind training at the beginning. I'm going to take very good care of you. I've done this before, and no one has died during this experience. No one's even been injured. No one's even fallen out of a boat, unless they wanted to jump into the river, which, believe it or not, I demonstrated during the experience because I wanted that teenager to see that I was going to be okay. And when I jumped in the water, obviously it wasn't during one of the higher rapid experiences,
Of
but in
course.
sales, this is where, one, having a plan in place. If you have a lot of anxiety in closing the business, add trial closes as a best practice. And then when push comes to shove, if you don't know, especially if you're new in the business or you're a new sales professional, you don't have a lot of that intuition that things are leaning towards a positive resolution in closing the business, then when you need to make the close happen, at some point you just got to do it. And my advice is, a bad close attempt is better than not ever asking for the business at all. And that's where,
Absolutely.
again, if you worked through the experience of, I know there's a process here, I have a plan, I recognize that the plan is only a plan. Mike Tyson, professional, famous boxer, American, gave a great post-fight interview after he knocked yet another boxer out, and he said something to the effect of, Michael, everybody who faces you says they have the secret and they have the plan that will knock you out. And yet here we are again. This guy said he had the plan. Everybody said they have a plan, and you knocked him out. Well, why do you think that is? And he gave a great line. And he said, you know what? Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. Right? And if you're getting punched in the face by, metaphorically, in sales, perhaps you've encountered a customer who's just going to challenge every single thing that you do, and they're not going to come along for the ride, and they don't believe you, they don't trust you, they have a lot of reasons that they're bringing to your negotiation or customer experience in sales and purchasing that they're bringing with them. All of these tools for sales are wonderful to bring in. There are no guarantees. However, to reduce anxiety, I think working through a great assume nothing, ask the question from your customer, and then when they give you their authentic response, it's fascinating when you say, okay, if this is the one secret that will solve everything, there's always going to be an exception to the rule. And as salespeople, they may be telling you what you want to hear to get off the phone with you because they don't want to do business with you, because your customer may have that same fear and anxiety of what you would feel if they said no to you. So sometimes there's that mirror reflection that it's not, we are connected to our customers in such a unique way that as sales professionals, that anxiety we're bringing into the conversation, your customer may be bringing it in as well. So typically when communication goes up in a positive and productive way, that anxiety comes down. So there you have it.
Fantastic. In fact, what I loved about your trial close approach, Eric, is that a lot of times anxiety is not just about whether the particular deal will be closing in or not, but it's also about the reporting that's going on internally in the organization. And when you don't have any incremental response to, okay, is this deal closing in or not? And what the trial closes would give any sales professional would be an incremental update on why it is not happening. If it is not happening, what more can be done to make it happen? So there's a lot that your approach would give, even from a reporting perspective. So I just love the fact that, there's a process to it. As you rightly said, nothing guarantees success. It's a matter of process and working towards it. And I love the fact that you said as the number of trial closes and the experience on it goes up, the anxiety levels go down. And I can totally relate to why. However, having said that, Eric, what I've seen, and you rightly pointed out that sales professionals do whatever it takes to build the right relationship, establish the right rapport, work with the personalities and personas that exist to get a right equation going and close the deal. But often I've seen, whenever a particular deal closes, positively or negatively, whether we close the deal or not, I've seen that there's a hands-off approach immediately. Not with the experienced professionals, but a lot of them, where I've seen that once the job is done, when they've handed over the deal or when they have closed, when they have the signatures, there's a hands-off approach immediately, which completely destroys the foundational rapport and relationship that they have built over time, because the immediate experiences that, hey, this was all a transaction all this while. Um, so and I love it that you stress on the criticality of gratitude in any of such engagements. I would love to have you throw some light on this in terms of why it matters, how it matters, and what's its role in building a sustained relationship over time.
I think, Ash, as we are stereotyped, and when I say we, sales professionals in general, or perhaps some non-professionals, when you are not setting an expectation in advance of um, roles and responsibilities with a customer, that is where that trust can be shattered or
Sure.
potentially. I like addressing those things before the contract is signed as often as possible so that there's no misunderstanding after the fact. And this is a great question, especially my suggestion is if you have established a wonderful relationship with your customer, they may not want to let go of you. They may not want to be reassigned to the operational services team. However, it's important to build trust in your value chain partners. So your internal, who you're handing it off to, communicating effectively all of those commitments. And what's outside the contract is typically also communicated. We didn't have an easy process negotiating this. It's important that you know that this happened, or this has been almost too easy. I'd like for you to really, as you're taking this on, recognize that this may or may not have had all of those solutions that you're concerned about
Sure.
addressed. So be aware. But as we communicate both to our customer, to our internal partner, my technique that I was trained in and that I use and believe in is always offering the customer a wonderful invitation to believe in the person who they're trusting on that you're handing it off to. It's like at the marathon and the Olympics or any of those relay races where you have to
Sure.
literally hand a baton to. Well, we don't do that in sales. There's not like a piece of something that we're handing other than the digital file, the actual file, and the information that's being shared. However, when we talk about the trust that's being built, if we are doing our job properly, your customer will trust you and they will enter that relationship. And whether they trust your partner or not typically is determined by how well that handover goes, and then how well the person you're handing the baton to demonstrates and builds trust with your customer.
Correct.
Because typically the first person you're going to call if your sales cycle has been long and your next you're servicing that contract is a long time as well, even if it's 2 years from now, they're going to call you as the sales professional when things don't
Correct.
go well. So typically, how do we get ahead of that and making sure that we're building that trust through properly communicating? You mentioned gratitude. So I think we all will have some form of expression of thanks when a deal is closed and when a contract is signed. What we will say to mindful sales professionals that we're working with and we're training or we're advising, and we share this in our book, Sell More, Stress Less, that that gratitude has to be baked in when you win the business, but also when you lose the business. How many times would you have experienced a salesperson who has 3 or 4 competitors on a piece of business
Oh, yes.
and believes that they've done everything properly? The customer has shared with them that they are really looking like the front runner here. Well, what happens when you do not win that business? And statistics will show, as a salesperson, you will lose way more business than you ever
Absolutely.
win as a statistical percentage. If you can have the right mindset, the right training, and the gratitude to your customers when not only you win the business, but when you lose the business, this will also help improve your overall professionalism and mental health. Because if all of a sudden losing that business that was going to take you to the next level sends you down a negative path, and now you're just going to carry that with you into every other part of your day, or you're going to make your coworkers miserable, or you're going to go home and make your family and friends miserable, or if it's just you, you're going to be miserable. There's a law of diminishing effect over time that will lead to burnout, that will lead to that stress and anxiety, health challenges that we're trying to avoid.
Fantastic. In fact, Eric, what I've often noted is that organizations, no matter how strong processes are that they are following, uh, often, especially at this stage when they lose a deal, I have seen that they do not venture into seeking a feedback on why did they even lose the deal, what is the main reason for the loss. You rightly mentioned that, if you have the right genuine gratitude and you have a right way of expressing it, that leaves a lot of room to get an honest feedback on why did we lose in the first place. And that would go a long way in correcting things internally, fixing gaps if there are any, and possibly winning the next deal in the pipeline. But just because this one touch point is often ignored or not rightly managed, as per your advice, I have seen that this rich intel is missed out completely, and organizations just move into the next deal in the pipeline without thinking, why did we lose the earlier one in the first place? So I'm glad you're highlighting this as part of the overall sales process. That brings me to the most important point in the entire discussion, which I feel nobody else but you would be able to answer, because you have been in both the roles. You have led services, you have led sales, and I'm sure you would have experienced what happens when false promises are made or the credibility is in question, and customer experience completely goes for a toss if that isn't managed well. And that could be a possibility when sales is completely following a target purely methodologically focused on numbers and not necessarily on the human aspect or the relationship aspect of the whole process. So, is there a way in which the mindful sales practices could impact this positively as well?
Yeah, there's many layers to that question, Ash, and I want to start with what I believe is the most important thing. And if you are in the business of making false promises to your customer or to your internal partner, um, it's never going to be a long-term success strategy for you and the business. And one of the things we want to have that helps us as mindful sales professionals and leaders of sales professionals, and when I hang out with other salespeople, these are critical things for me. When I started working with one of my business partners who didn't have a lot of sales experience, and they made a statement to me that it was early in our relationship, and they said something to the effect of, well, you're a salesperson and I know you'll just say anything to get it done. It was basically one of their beliefs that they gave to me, and I had to immediately pause and say, first and foremost, I would never do that.
Right.
It's important to me. My reputation is so important to me as a sales professional that I would rather lose the business than lie or misrepresent something that would lead to a potential conflict of my ethics in the future. Why is that? And there's several different reasons for it. And frankly, I think it does boil down to, when we want our customers to experience the greatest sales experience of their life, part of the way we do that as a customer, as a salesperson with a awareness of customer experience is we know that there's a potential financial impact of that later. So are we solving a problem today, getting to our sales quota? But ultimately, I've been responsible for the entire budget of multiple regions and multiple areas. So if I were to solve today's problem that creates such a problem down the road that it could impact future success, it's a little selfish to be ethical. It's a little selfish, and it's okay that you're protecting yourself from future conflict, but it's not
Correct.
always just about that. You're protecting your business. And when I led teams, and especially new managers that would come to me and say, Eric, you have all of the power because you are in a position of authority, I would often question that statement and restate and reaffirm that I am not in a position of any power above you as your leader. What I am in a position of is higher accountability.
Wow.
And when you think about the accountability of me as a leader, you as a salesperson, or me as a salesperson, or everyone reports up to someone.
Correct.
If I'm going to vouch for you and I'm going to vouch for me, my accountability, if you make all the mistakes in the world and I know about it and I allow those things to happen, that would reflect on me in a negative way that
Yes.
could impact my future, either employment, or if it's a contract, future contracts with, if I'm freelancing or being hired by customers. But that accountability piece, when you get to CEO or you get to shareholder or investor, if you start at a certain level in an organization that might have a lower accountability, you're really just responsible for turning on the lights and welcoming everyone. And then that's your piece of accountability. Great. Well, we trust you with that. My accountability, leading major budgets, multiple millions. I haven't managed billions yet personally, but I've gotten to the hundreds of millions of dollar level of accountability. That is a burden that does carry a certain level of stress with it, but at the same time, that accountability. I had a great sales team in it was a sales and services team that got it, and they would question decisions in our meetings that would be brought down, and I would often bring them in as thought partners and before major decisions would come in, so we didn't just come on high and bring things in. We had a very seasoned team, but they would always get to a point where if one person was really questioning me or my thought process in it, the team would come in and say, listen, there's one man that has to go before our ownership and our senior leadership and justify these actions, and that's Eric. So you don't have to go in and speak to the owners and the leaders and justify our decisions. And I'm not saying that's a position of power, but that is a position of responsibility. And my accountability, I have to be able to justify those conversations.
Of course.
And if you're putting some idea out there that's so out of left field that it's a good idea, but it isn't tied to any business result, then it's going to be difficult for me to take that and carry it into those conversations, build it into the overall plan. And hopefully that helps a little bit with some insights.
So absolutely, Eric. In fact, gone are the days when the sales snake oil salesmanship worked, where sales folks moved from one village to the other, selling some random stuff, which the customers often quickly realized that this was a fake product. But by then, the salesperson had already moved to the next village. Now, the world is so closely knit that this is impossible. One cannot even imagine doing this. So thank you for highlighting that, Eric. And with that, I would love to call out a most important aspect of all that you continue to talk about, Eric, is often people misunderstand that mindfulness in sales is more about reducing anxiety and stress, when in fact it's a lot more also about improving the sales effectiveness, the sales morale, the team's morale, sales productivity. And I would love to Have you shed some light on that as well, Eric?
Yes, and Ash, there's three key areas when we speak about mindfulness and sales together that are
Sure.
tied to business results. Any business that has deficiencies in one or more of these areas would benefit from training and bringing their team into a mindful sales experience. And those three areas, of course, we start with the financial results. Are you achieving your top line and or bottom line goals? Or if yes, great. Is that something you've been able to sustain based on your organization's culture? Are your practices and processes leading you to those goals
Sure.
and achieving and exceeding them? Customer experience goals are absolutely paramount. So when we're speaking about how you measure a customer experience goal, I mean, there's obviously more than one way. A survey and effectiveness, 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, all the way to 10 out of 10 being highly satisfied or completely dissatisfied, completely satisfied. Would you recommend us? Obviously, these are great units of measurement. However, you can dig much deeper into parts of the sales experience in customer experience. So like, did you have a great intake form? Did you have a great experience when you experienced your trial of the product? Did you have a great experience with your salesperson? Would you recommend that someone else work for that salesperson? Recently, within the past year, I had a poor billing experience with an organization when I was a customer. And that everything went super well. The sales process, the experiencing the product, the deposit. But when the final bill was presented and it was presented incorrectly, the entire customer experience house of cards fell. And the salesperson that I was working with in that particular purchase, let's just say it was about $25,000 US purchase, completely forgot everything we spoke about and put into the contract and went into oops, I messed up, but I don't want to tell my boss that. I don't want to tell the owner
Gosh.
that. And it led to a billing dispute that took about 5 months to
Oh,
mostly resolve. But however, it really led to a very poor experience. But when we speak about customer experience and financial results, they're tied together. And
of
then
course.
the third piece is your employee experience. How is your employee experiencing their sales goals? Are you just cracking the whip over them all the time and demanding more, more, more? The metrics, are you never satisfied? Do you not have any sort of celebratory appreciation and gratitude built in for your employee or your coworker? Or Disney, we called it cast members because we were all playing our role in the great show of the business that we do. But for us, when we're talking about improving your sales results, your customer experience, your employee experience using mindfulness in sales, it's a very specific goal. And we're not trying to convert you to any sort of religious experience or any type of take you away from those objectives. What we're
Sure.
actually trying to do and what we accomplish in using these practices is improving those results. We have the formula that will actually create the right culture for your organization to thrive. And we do that in collaboration with the leaders, with the line associates, the management, the mid-level managers. We look at the organization as a whole. And I'd like to say that I agree with you completely when you say there are no more snake oil salespersons. And for those who are maybe younger and don't really even never heard that experience, this goes way back before you and I, way generations, where someone would come into town, probably either on a horse or walking into a town or a village. Maybe this exists today on Earth, who knows? And they say, I have the cure for what ails you. It's in this bottle, and it is the oil from a snake. And all you have to do is, it could be drink it, it could be rub it on your part of your body that hurts or what have you, and it will all be cured. They sell a bunch of this product, and before everyone realizes that they've been fooled, there's no cure that this remedy that has been proposed, the salesperson, the snake oil salesman has left town and they will never be heard from again. And this is so deeply rooted in the sales stereotype that I believe that exists today. And the work we're doing is to eradicate that. And it may not be that exact same scenario where someone's coming to you and trying to sell an oil in a bottle that comes from a snake, but there's an infinite number of variables of that same situation. I don't have an example for you today, Ash, but I will practically guarantee that that is happening today and that will continue happening. All I can tell you is our goal is to not do that. And if we encounter those experiences, is we can help you remove that from your company so that does not happen. And we will thrive without those sort of things. And we're not looking to just make a quick buck in using mindfulness in sales. We want the big bucks. We want the little bucks. They come in all shapes and sizes. And it's whether that purchase is free, it's a bartered exchange for services where there's no money or currency or anything exchanged, or whether this is a multi-billion-dollar transaction. We want that customer experience and the sales experience and the financial experience to all benefit from that.
Amazing. More power to you, Eric. I genuinely feel that all the listeners and the viewers, they'll benefit a lot from the depth with which we have covered this whole topic of mindful sales. We pretty much covered the entire sales journey across all the touch points, and we discussed how each of these touch points could be transformed with this approach of mindful sales. The only key question now, which I'm sure the listeners and viewers would have, is if they are the sales leaders or the business leaders and they want to work with you and have their teams onboarded onto this practice, how can they reach you? And the second, if the sales professionals want to be the mindful sales professionals, how could then they engage, in what way they could learn about it, and how could they get connected?
Well, and thank you for the offer. And much like we live in Colorado in the United States, much like the most recent college football coach Deion Sanders said, we are not hard to find. We are, Holly Duckworth and myself, the leaders of Leadership Solutions International, we are actively engaged in social media. We are actively engaged in our website where you can go to our Leadership Solutions, intl.com. So we abbreviate the word international. And our customers around the world will initially reach out to us there. They'll find us. They'll do their research to see if this is something that they're interested in. And we have very easy links. There's some free resources when you visit our website that you can download immediately to help you understand a little bit about the work that we do. And we are also available if you reach out to us on LinkedIn or other social platforms where you just right away, you know you need help. And our response time is to get in touch with you very quickly so that we can start engaging in that conversation. And many of our customers will come to us when they're already in crisis. Some of our customers will come to us, potential customers, when they are anticipating that things might be going down a path that could lead to negative business results. And we also have some customers where they don't really know if they're doing okay and they don't have the measurements in place and the systems in place, but they know they want to create those experiences, and they need a thought partner and a consultant that can come in and guide them towards putting those things in place. So if you're an individual sales professional or you're the leader of a major organization, we've worked with the smallest and the largest to drive those results. And we have great partners that we collaborate with that we can also bring to the table. So first and foremost, I know my name can be challenging to spell. My last name is Szymanski. We'll make sure you have the resources there. Holly Duckworth is a wonderful CEO and leader of our company. We have co-founded the American Mindfulness Association, which is a joint venture that is supported by our company. We are the management entity of the association. So if you are a business that is interested in collaborating, experiencing some education and networking with other professionals, not just in the sales space, this could be in mindful leadership. We have members who are actively engaged in improving their business in education or in you could be a sole proprietor, an individual practitioner that's counseling and treating individuals or working with businesses to improve their overall results using mindfulness as a tool. Obviously, the sales process is one department in your organization. We work with professionals that are in every department in business. It often surprises some of our customers and potential customers that it's not just one little area that we can influence. This could be your human resources. This could be accounting. This could be operations, the C-suite. Clearly, business development, sales operations is a link that ties it all together. But we'd love to enjoy that conversation with you. We are a business. We recognize that you're in business or you're learning about business as well. So we want to find the win-win for us. Sometimes that free resource is just that one little nugget you needed today, and it will help you with your business justification to hire us down the road. We welcome the opportunity to enter into any of those conversations to see how we can work with you, and we look forward to doing that. So reach out to us. This is a very fun year. Once this year is complete, we have Olympics, we have American elections and anxiety all around, all the uncertainty of those things. The one common denominator that we recognize in the future is potential uncertainty, and that's where our business thrives. We want to bring what Hollywood say chaos to calm, take you from current state to stable state and thriving state. And any way we can do that, we're available. We'd love to work with you. There's our close.
Fantastic. The chaos to come can't get better than that. Eric, thank you so much for doing this for all of us. Eric, I've engaged with you now. I've engaged with Holly in the past, and I can vouch for the fact that interactions with you is not a transaction. It's a genuine value exchange. And that's what comes out in all that you do, in all that you say. So really appreciate your time, despite you being in US and for the later part of the conversation in Mexico now. You've managed to give us time and your wonderful insights. Appreciate that. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate your time.
And you're welcome. And we thank you, and we thank the listeners. Our gratitude is extended beyond a one-way transaction here. And we look forward to future conversations with you and your listeners. So thank you again, Ash, and have a wonderful rest of your week. And we look forward to speaking again.
Likewise, Eric. Talk to you soon. Have a lovely day ahead.